Hello and welcome. This is Stacy. I'm going to give you a quick tour of how to use the Benny app. So the interface is fairly simple. It has 3 steps. You load a file, you choose a field, and you get a Benny. So let's go through the steps and see how things turn out. When you load a file, you can choose to do so either from the library or from a local store. On the library, I can see I've got 3 files in there already. This is a persistent data store, a directory of CSVs that lives on the server. I'm going to choose to load from a local source instead. I'm going to choose this widgets file right here. When I do so, I'm given a preview so I can confirm for myself if I'm loading what I think I'm loading. And I'm given a little switch here that I can flip if I want to add it to the library. If there's already a file in the library of the same name, it won't load. And so when I push load here, that is the case. I get a pop-up indicating that the file name already exists, so it wasn't added. I'm certainly welcome to rename my local file and try again. In the meantime, I can rest assured there's no duplicates sitting on the server. The data is loaded into Tabulator, which is a great JavaScript library for managing lots of data in the browser without bogging down the browser. In this case, there's not much data, so that's a non-issue. Tabulator provides other nice features as well. I provided a couple of them here, such as this elastic style search filter. There's a grouping filter, and then the user is allowed to move these columns around if that helps them look at the data. And then once they're satisfied with their data exploration, they can move on to choosing a field and getting a Benny. So let's pick a field. I'm going to choose the cost field because it's all numeric data. Plus it's a little interesting because of these decimals. The first characters of those decimal values are zeros, so I would expect those would not be picked up in the numerical distribution. But we'll see. Let's get a Benny. This sends the column of data to the server, and a response is returned with the numerical distribution as well as a chi-square statistic. The distribution itself is put into a high charts display that can be viewed as a column, bar, or line graph, whatever the user likes to look at. And then if I pop this info toggle open, I've got some additional information that gives transparency into what transpired with my data when it was analyzed on the server. With respect to result, I'd like to say that I don't have the app comment on shape. I figured that the user can simply look at the chart and decide for themselves how things got along with the shape aspect. Of course, as the amount of data gets bigger, it's harder to tell whether or not there's a statistical deviation, even if the shape looks good. And so what the app does is comment on the statistical deviation by computing a chi-square statistic. This is a common way of doing it. I've kept it really simple though by simply putting a limit of 8 on that statistic. If the chi-square statistic is less than or equal to 8, there's a little green alert that says so. And if it's greater than 8, there's a red alert that says so. In the case of the red alert, that is intended to indicate that there's probably a significant statistical deviation in the distribution as compared to what's expected given Benford's law. And of course, between the red alert and the wonky looking graph, I think the user can tell pretty easily that there's not an alignment here. So under data, I've simply provided a tabular version of what's already in the high chart. And under inclusions, I give an indication of the number of rows that was in the original data set, the number of those rows that was analyzed, and the number that was rejected. We'd previously mentioned that those decimals might cause a problem, so let's pop open this inclusions report that comes back with every Benny report and see if that's the case. In the inclusions report, I've got my row numbers, I've got the column of data that went to the server, I've got the first characters that were parsed out of the records in that column of data, and then I've got an indication as to whether or not the data was included in the analysis, true if it was, false if it wasn't, and in the case of the decimals, they were indeed kicked out because of that first character being 0. So that's it for how to use the Benny app. You load a file, you choose a field, you get a Benny. If you pull something from the app library that you want to keep on your local, you just put get table, and that'll download that information to your local machine so you can work with it as you please. That's it for the app. I hope it passes muster from your perspective. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to let me know. I would love the feedback. And in the meantime, I just wish you the best of luck on getting your next Benny. Thanks a bunch.